Well, Dan just did the first couple of slides for me and stole my speech, so I'll be done faster. I didn't know I was going to be on YouTube, so I would have had some better nerdy water jokes if I would have known that, but you're going to have to just suffer with this. So, let's see here. So I worked with this. Okay, now I'm really done. I'll get it here. Okay. I worked with the Stearns County Survey Office to go through here and collect some more of this data. So if we look at the upstream side of this covered bridge, not a lot's going to get through here easy. You can start to see some of these debris flows. There's some sediment buildup here. This is just upstream of the culverts here in Holdingford. And you can see that this is set at a kind of a skew angle to the water. So it kind of messes up the natural channel. It just changes things there. So we looked at that site. This is the low water ford crossing that I modeled later on. You have the approach here. Let me get my buttons right here. The approach here, downstream is going to the left of the slide, and the other approach here. This is where the snowmobile crossing is on the trail, and you can see it was a lovely site to survey. All this green slime out here. That's why I'm taking photos. This is a representative channel or sample where we did the cross-section through here. This is the snowmobile bridge. This is looking upstream. And one of the points I'd like to point out here is you have pretty wide channel through here, lots of cattails, pretty wide floodplain. And then we have a channel constriction where the channel downstream becomes a little bit less wide and stays that way for the rest of the way down to the culverts. This is, I'll point out where these are located on the stream on a map further up. Cranes Creek empties into County Ditch 28, and this is looking just upstream. You can see there's a lot of sediment buildup here. There's a lot that comes out. The drainage area for Cranes Creek is about 25 square miles. And downstream, also, you can see these big, wide sediment plains. If anybody, is anyone here that Dean helped survey? This is really squishy. There's a lot of water held in these. Trying to survey through here was very interesting. And these floodplains are super wide. Lots of willow, just lots of storage for the water to go. This is a sample stream profile. So since County Ditch 28 is a ditch, started out originally, this is what a stream would look like, a natural stream. You have a riffle, a run, and a pool. So anybody who likes to fish, you know not to jump in the pool because you're going to fill up your waders, right? So this is what you're looking for in a natural stream. My next slide shows a sample longitudinal profile that Nikki collected. And through here, this is not the entire stream. This is about 1,300 feet surveyed around that low ford crossing. This is the low ford with this black line is. That's the cross-section survey there. So if we're going, this is the upstream end. We're in a pool. We go back up to the top of the riffle. You're going to go down the run, down to another pool. So you can see how these are averaged out. This is similar to the water levels that we looked at earlier. This is the channel bottom through here. So the low ford crossing is here, and then we have another run through a riffle back down to another pool. So the difference between here, which is the top of the next run, is about 3/4 of a foot. So Dan already kind of led into this. HECRAS is a model used extensively for engineering studies, flood studies. It's widely accepted. Sometimes it's required. So we use this model. It was started by a FEMA flood insurance study, or just a flood study through there. I used a combination of the LIDAR data through GIS, field survey data that I did with the survey crew. And we modeled the existing conditions with the crossing in, and then I took the crossing out to show what a comparison would look like with that. So we did the 1.5 year. That one's going to happen roughly every year. 10 year, 50 year, and then the 100 year, which is also the 1%, which is where your flood insurance study comes in if anybody's needed to buy the extra insurance for that. This is what my profile looked like. This is the upstream end. This is the lake outlet. We know that elevation right there. That's the run out of the lake. That's set. So use that as our starting elevation. This is our bottom profile. Here's the snowmobile crossing. We've got some sedimentation going on there, so you're seeing some of those bumps. This is the low ford crossing. Here's the high spot. Covered bridge. This scale, these are 1 foot at this point. And this is the distance. This is, the top of this surface is the 1.5 year flood. You're going to see this roughly once every 2 years. This is the 10-year elevation. This is the 50. This is the 100. The ordinary high is 1131, which falls in right here. So that's between the 1.5 and the 10% flood. This is the 100-year. So the channel stays pretty consistent through here. At the low ford crossing, notice that we're not seeing any elevation changes there in the water surface profile. This is the rating curve for the discharge. This is at the low ford crossing. So what I did for this is, these are all the flows. The red line is modeled with the ford there. So as the discharge gets higher, the elevation gets higher. So the more flow you have going through there, the higher elevation you're going to have. So if we start here, this is without the ford, and the red line is with the ford. The dashed line is without. There is a 0.02 difference in these using HECRAS. This is the lake outlet. Same thing. As you get more water going through, it's obviously going to go higher. So based on the elevations, I overlaid these lines so the colors don't show out very well, but the fact that they are overlaid means they're exactly the same. So when I took the ford out, these lines matched up. So there's no impact on the lake level from the ford. Elevation increase is a function of discharge. This is station 12,500, and I'll show you where that is on the map. This is where these profiles meet. So that's where the ford stops impacting the stream. So I went through every cross section, overlaid these, and when they stopped looking like this one, then I knew they were the same and that there was no impact anymore. So if we look at this, the low ford is right here. Station 12.5 is right here. So that's a distance of about 4,000 feet. Ryan Maltard was not able to make it tonight, but this is his contact information for the Army Corps of, and if anybody would like this, this will also be available. So.
Thanks, Crystal. Next we have Kurt Dieter, and he is a ditch attorney who works with Stearns County.
Coincidentally, and in full disclosure, I had a place on Two Rivers Lake about 25 years ago. I was on the southeast side. It was a green cabin with a gazebo if you were around at that time. It's now a year-round brick home, but I owned that place for several years, and so I'm very familiar with the idea of there were times I had 20, 30 feet of a nice sandy beach and times where it was up into the grass of the yard I had at that time. I do ditch work all over the state since 1978. That's basically all I do. My parents never bragged about their son, the ditch lawyer. It's been my goal never to have to do a divorce case, and there are so many water issues around the state now that I don't think I'll have to. I want to very quickly go through what a county ditch is. Many of you may know this, but about 100 years ago, Minnesota had no agricultural future without better drainage, and it's basically the same law. We have a drainage code in Minnesota that's been in place, 103E, that's been there about 100 years. And so when this ditch was constructed in 1906, it was one of the first ones in Stearns County. And because they're called county ditches, people have the idea that the county somehow owns county ditch number 28. The county board, I always tell county boards, they have to take off their county commissioner hat and put on their drainage authority hat. They are the drainage authority for County Ditch 28. It's too bad almost they call them county ditches. They do not own County Ditch 28. County Ditch 28 was constructed in 1906 and paid for by the assessed landowners who felt that in 1906 that better drainage was worth it. They got together under the statute to do this community project. It could be assessed through taxes, and any money that goes into County Ditch 28 has to be from assessed landowners. General revenue money does not go into County Ditch 28. The county board, as the drainage authority, simply acts as the banker and the referee. There's an ability to do it through assessments over a period of time, which makes it sometimes easier to do a project, and they make sure that the statute is being followed. As the drainage authority, and again in 1906, without being there obviously, I'm sure County Ditch 28 was put in at that time following a generally natural waterway, and it was simply to put in to dry down some pasture. There was not the pattern tile, there was not the agricultural practices today. So they put it in at that time simply to get a little better pasture land, maybe some land to make some hay, but not the type of reasons that we have drainage systems now. Martin County, which is Fairmont, Minnesota, for example, has 240 county ditch system, most of them tile systems. In this part of the state, most of our systems that are, quote, public systems, they're called public, although they're owned. If you happen to own a parcel of property that paid 2% of the cost of Ditch 28 in 1906, that parcel pays 2% of every dime put into County Ditch 28 until there's what's called a redetermination of benefits done, which has never been done on County Ditch 28. So the same percentages that were paid in 1906 are paid today for any work to do on that particular system. The county board, under the statute, has a duty to maintain the ditch system, although it's somewhat of a catch-22 because they are spending landowner money. And so they have a fiduciary duty to make sure that they're spending money efficiently and that makes sense. So as they get requests for repair, the first analysis they have to do is it out of repair? And secondly, whatever we're thinking of doing, will it make a difference? Because we're going to be assessing those costs back against the landowners. Anything beyond a repair cannot be done by the county board under their own motion. They do not have jurisdiction to do improvements, impoundments. Let's go the other way. There's several different types of systems you can do. The only one the board can do under their own motion, either under their own motion or by a repair petition, are repairs. And a repair is to put it back into its original condition. It is not to deepen it, widen it, and I haven't looked at the Ditch 28 file to see if we even have cut sheets on what it was in 1906. Sometimes we have to do soil borings to determine. We cannot go by the drainage authority cannot go beyond what was originally there. Anything beyond that is an improvement, and an improvement takes a petition from the landowners. The county board could not say we're going to deepen, widen County Ditch 28 separate from all the possible wetland issues and other issues, but just under drainage law, they would have to have a petition from the landowners that takes, again, it's the next slide, I don't want to bore you with it, but it takes 26% of the landowners counted by 40s. And then there's a whole process to do an improvement petition, which again has, on a particular project like this, and I probably got 40 improvement projects where I represent the landowners all over the state, generally more in southwest Minnesota and in the valley, where it's pure farm, where they're putting in a lot of pattern tile. But it's a whole process, including adequacy of the outlet. If we were going to deepen or widen County Ditch 28 by a petition, we'd have a number of wetland issues, we'd have adequacy of the outlet issues, whether the outlet would be adequate for an improvement. Another possibility under the statute, again, would take a petition whether there was an area that could be impounded or a way to do retention on this particular, which can be a combination of drainage project with sometimes legacy funds, and there are other people in the room that know better the different potential grants that might be available. Although I don't want to stand up here and say there's a magic bullet to do anything in this particular thing, but the county board, as the drainage authority, doesn't have the authority to initiate an impoundment or to initiate an improvement. That has to come from the landowners. So the issue on County Ditch 28 is the board has some statutory responsibilities, but also has some jurisdictional limits what they can do. And again, as far as, and I'm not I'm not an engineer. I'm not all that, other than I lived on Two Rivers Lake. I haven't traveled or know what the amount of sediment in County Ditch 28. But again, the board is spending your, quote, your money. Any of you that happen to have land within the assessed area, any money they would spend removing sediment or whatever is your money and would be assessed against you. So they want to make sure if they did that, anything they did, that they would see a difference between before they did it and after they did it. Whoever's
You see, we're putting many of these puzzle pieces together about the lake and the ditch. And next up is Shelley Benson from Stearns County Environmental Services.
Good evening. Oops, I think I might have hit something again. I'll let you fix that. It's okay. One of the things that we do in environmental services is we are the regulators of some of the mandated programs at the state level. One of the things we are mandated to do is the shoreline regulations. That's been since 1973. So when somebody wants to build a structure, subdivide land, work through various processes on that property, they need to come and get permits. So in Stearns County, shoreline management is through environmental services, and that's a mandated state program. We also have subsurface sewage treatment, so when you want to put in your septic system or fix your septic system, it has to meet the state requirements. So it's mandated. It has to be above the 10-year flood elevation level. So we talk about all these different levels. We have to meet the ordinary high water and then take a measurement to make sure it's meeting the setback requirements, both for structures and for your septic systems. Then we have the Wetland Conservation Act. Kurt touched on that a little bit, that when you have drainage law, you often have wetlands associated in the areas or areas that drain into wetlands, so you have to manage those. The Wetland Conservation Act has been in existence since 1992 and basically says you have to, drainage and excavation and fill drainage of wetlands is regulated by the state. There are exemptions and process, and we work with that throughout the county. Again, a mandated program that the county is responsible for. So these are programs that have been given to the county to regulate throughout the area. The other is floodplain. And now I need the next. So I think if you look at this slide, you're going to see all this orange area. That's what we've been talking about, the floodplain. And you see in Two Rivers, there's quite an area of floodplain. And one of the things that we have to regulate is that elevation of structures, and that elevation is important so that when you do have high water, you're not being flooded and you don't have problems. So what we did is took a look at some of the information related to permits that were issued in the county. So over the past, well, all of the information we could find, that just because we are a permitting agency doesn't mean everybody gets permits. We try to encourage everybody to get their permits and go through a process. And you can see here that quite a few people have gotten permits. We have 169 total permits that are listed. So as you see these green dots, these are people and places that have had permits. But as you notice, we have got some permits over here, but they're a little bit further back. And then we have quite a few in here that are either in the floodplain or very close to that ordinary high water, which is that blue line. So those are areas of concern that when you do a project and it's close to that ordinary high water, sometimes with the fluctuations, some of those project improvements that people have made get washed away, for lack of a better term. So we've had shoreland alteration permits, conditional use permits to add fill to property. And when you add fill to property, what you're dealing with is displacement of water. So you're adding fill to elevate your structure, but the water's got to go somewhere, so it's going to run around it, so it's going to go onto the neighbor's property. So those are the kinds of things that we look at. We have a lot of land use issues in this area, and we've had a lot of conversion of land. So as people have converted agricultural land to cropland, they've done pattern tiling, we've had a lot of conversion of land use, so the water storage in the area has decreased. So this is what we work with in environmental services. We've had variances and conditional use permits. Some of those variances are to allow people to build closer to the ordinary high water. Some are to build closer to the road. It just depends on what people ask for. But there are consequences to those things. And what we're trying to do is explain kind of all of the different things that have occurred. So you see these are some of the things where multiple permits have been issued. So they've either had a variance and a conditional use permit to add fill to the property. And those are things that we look at in environmental services. So some of the other issues that we relate to are the water plan. So that is an area where we look at all of the issues related to water in the county. And in this area, Two Rivers has had kind of its ups and downs with water. It used to be a watershed district. It's no longer a watershed district, and now we're dealing with what can we do in this area. We have included in our county water plan some specific language that will allow for studying of this area to be done, so that if people want to get grants, or there's an opportunity for soil and water to get grants to study some of these areas, it's in our water plan. It allows that opportunity to occur, because when you apply for grants through the state, they want to know that it's been considered as a part of your water plan. So let's see, what else do we have on my agenda tonight? As Dan had talked about, when we look at that ordinary high water, that perception of where that water level is, and I think, thank you, Nikki, for taking that picture of the pink flag. I think it's important for you as the residents to understand where that ordinary high water mark is in relation to the projects that you want to do on your property. So we do suggest that you work with soil and water, other entities, the county environmental services. We will help you, work with you to get you through these projects and permitting process, but you do need to understand where that ordinary high water is, and we do think it's important to survey your property as well, so you understand the parameters that you're working in. So with that, I think we're up to Aaron from Emergency Management.